Welcome back to Manifestly Good, where we dive into the stories and values that shape men of integrity, impact, and purpose. Today, my guest is Anthony Ryan, a man whose life and leadership reflect a deep commitment to putting other people first. Whether that's in education, philanthropy, or civic duties, Anthony has shown what is absolutely possible when you put empathy, integrity, and a value system first. Let's get into it. Welcome to Manifestly Good, the podcast where we explore what it means to live as a good man in today's world. My guest today is Anthony Ryan, a Queenslander who has a life that's a powerful testament to what it means to live by a strong value system. From choosing teaching over finance to co-founding Eddie's Van and leading organisations like Youngcare, the Edmund Rice Foundation, and now the Brisbane Economic and Development Agency, Anthony has a career where he's put people first. He's also the founder of initiatives like Gone Fishing, and in 2013 was named a Queensland Great for his contribution to community, connection and change. Welcome to Manifestly Good, Anthony.
Good. I can tell you, absolutely guarantee I'm the least great of all the greats.
Yeah, that's perhaps what someone who belongs to that club would always say.
No, it's also what my sons say.
Yeah, they're the worst people to ask. How do you introduce yourself these days?
Well, my day job is the CEO of Brisbane Economic Development Agency, and more importantly, when people actually say, what does that mean? And the reason why I took the role is I truly believe that I could assist and help being an architect in the future prosperity of individuals in the city.
Yeah.
This is an incredible opportunity at the moment.
It's a huge job.
It is a great job, and it is a big job, but it's also a fun job. And in the lead up to 2032, one of the things that really has driven me is that when Brisbane got announced years ago as the future Olympic and Paralympic city, there was a survey that went out, a global survey, talked about how Brisbane was recognised, and quite literally it was in around about 3 to 5% of the world could actually even point where Brisbane was, and it was less that actually knew about it. And what will happen over the next 7 8 years, that will go from about 3% through to about 90%. Yeah. And that's an extraordinary opportunity, because all of a sudden you go from being a wonderful city, but to a city that everyone knows about. And as you grow, you've got this opportunity to grow in a way that embraces all the good things about growth, the sustainability, the disability. How do we build for diversity? How do we create precincts that truly embrace families and inspire a nighttime economy and all those things? And that's what I'm excited about. So when I was in that not-for-profit space, working with Youngcares and working in Edmund Rice, working in some of the poorest places in the world, you can see purpose and you can see impact. What excites me on this one is we do a good job and it impacts, over 1 million people within a city, and it's awesome experience and responsibility.
When you frame it like that, I know you and I both already agree that Brisbane's the best place on earth to live, but with that sort of opportunity and future ahead of it, and you're right, I'd never thought about it from that awareness perspective. And the world's eye turns towards Brisbane. It's an opportunity that's rare.
The stat was when we got announced in Brisbane, the next day on Google, the biggest hit in the whole world was Brisbane.
Wow.
But it wasn't, it was where the hell is Brisbane? What is Brisbane?
Yeah.
Because, you're used to having LAs and your Parises and your Tokyos, et cetera. Those, Rio de Janeiro, those big cities, those global powerhouses being associated with the bigger mega event, and all of a sudden Brisbane, the smallest city in the history of the Olympics and Paralympics, has been named, and it just sort of changes the way we are now viewed forever.
It's probably not the biggest thread we're going to pull today, but I'm glad you're the man that's doing that on our behalf for the city. This podcast built around exploring what it means to live as a good man, and your experience sort of crosses lots of domains, education and philanthropy, as well as business and things like that. I'm interested in knowing what you would say is a definition for you of a good man. What does being a good man mean?
That's a good question. I think that when you look into the mirror and that you look at the person staring back at you, I know this sounds cliched, that you actually respect the person that's staring back at you. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you can't cheat yourself, and you can't cheat the way you think about yourself. And in those moments where you're alone, how you truly reflect on what you are doing, how you're doing it, how you're relating to people, whether or not you are being authentic to the one journey you've got on this earth, and are you really living it? I think, to me, that's the mark. And if you can look back and I don't think truly many people can actually look at that person in the mirror and go, you're perfect, if you're going to be really honest. In fact, probably we're our own worst critics. But if you can hit the mark and say, I'm actually having a crack at being a good dad or a good partner, I'm actually fair in the workplace, I'm living with as much energy and purpose to change and alternate, I think they're the things that matter.
Thank you. It's a lovely description. The value that sticks out to me in your description through the first part of that is integrity. It's about holding yourself to the standards that you think are important. And but the second part I love too. I don't ever want to give the message that being a good man means being perfect. It's an aspirational thing. It's trying to be better. And
there's no one that's perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
I suspect a lot of this started early for you and your childhood and your upbringing in Brisbane. Is that where you think some of your value system comes from? Like, can you point to where?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of really powerful memories. First one, I was a bad asthmatic when I was younger, so I used to miss out on a lot of school. And every Tuesday, my mother used to run this thing around Kedron and Lutwich and Stafford. It was called the Samaritan Committee. She started it up, and it was about, she saw these lonely people living in the suburbs, and she wanted to create something that would give them an opportunity to gather. So there was crafts, there were artworks, creative industries that would gather around these people and give them something to do. Gave them coffee, they'd play bingo, they'd do whatever, but it was just a gathering called the Samaritan Committee. And often on a Tuesday, because of my asthma, I'd be there and I'd be on a trundle bed, lying down there and watching it all unfold in this place called the Porziuncula, which was an Italian term.
Yeah.
And we used to sit there and watch it all. And I can remember looking with awe at Mum as she conducted this extraordinary community gathering where it was all these broken people, lonely people coming together and giving that sense of community. And you'd almost see them as they came in the week before, it was wearing on their shoulders and on their face. And by the time they left, there was this sense of fun and giggling, and that was important for me because I could see the purpose of it. I could see the impact that one person could have on a community. Yeah. And also because I want to say that, go back, like that can be seen as syrupy. It was actually genuine. I could see Mum, she was doing it for no other reason. She was feeling good about it, of course, but she was doing it for no other reason. She saw that this was something where she could utilise her skills and sense of warmth, which she had, which was incredible that way, and energy into something good. And then another powerful memory is my dad. My brother lost his way when he hit university for the first time, and Dad was a really proud man, typical sort of Irish Catholic type background, wouldn't give too much emotion away. Yeah. And anyway, they had a massive fight. Dad, at the time, my brother was experimenting with drugs in his first year of university. He was out and about, and anyway, it came to a head. They had a massive fight. Dad basically said, "You can't be in this house if you're going to be like that." Yeah. He didn't want us seeing it all, and Matthew got thrown out that night. And instead of Dad, coming back up into the house, we had this, and as I look back and it's even more profound, we had this barbecue, red brick barbecue that he built with us, hand by hand, brick by brick. And it was a sort of our family focus in the backyard. Mm. And after the big fight, and we were all scared and etc., Dad was slumped behind the barbecue in the backyard crying. And I could see it from my window, and I knew that was a symbol of family. That it was a sort of a physical symbol of our family, that barbecue, and there he was behind it. And I always remember, and I was intrigued at the time that he felt he couldn't show that emotion to us. He came back in and he pretended. He just washed it away when we went and gave him a hug. He said, "Oh no, I'm all right." But I saw how broken he was behind that barbie.
You remember how you felt at that time?
Oh yeah, I was scared. I was absolutely scared. But once again, like how I said, lying on that trundle bed looking at my mum serve, I also saw something in my father that day that impacted me, and that sense of that fear of showing emotion, and the impact that had on him as an ability to go from week to week and carrying that pain was probably terrible. He was a good dad. He was a great dad. And
Well, what you describe's super common, particularly for that generation, but even as the model we carry in now about what men are, right?
Yeah.
About what masculinity is, and it's about being able to stoically keep things together and be the rock that people can rely on.
yeah,
And with that comes this conception that emotions don't waver all over the place.
yeah.
So where's that leave you? Like, that's a strong impression. How do you feel about emotion and being able to share that with people in difficult times?
Well, I think what it did was I think of it quite a bit. I really find it hard to turn my mind off, and so when I reflect on those, so it certainly does impact the way that you then go about what you think's important in life. And I think those sort of experiences, they made me understand individuals more. I think I was taught empathy from an earlier age, not empathy in the sense that you feel sorry for someone, because that's wasted emotion. And I think it's condescending to the person. Anything that I've done in, working in slums or working with disability in all its various forms, or working with the street people, homeless people of the city, I've felt empathy. I haven't felt sorry for them in a condescending way, but it's taught me that the importance of sitting down and understanding their story. And I have found so much power and transformation can happen in those moments where you don't necessarily need to have a solution, but something's happening between the two of you in that encounter that you are learning from. And where I've seen that happen all around the world, or in Brisbane, and working with the homeless here, is transformation isn't often what's seen in the movies where there's this big rainbow moment. It's actually these simple incremental changes in the way people think and move on in their own lives. And they're the things they're the pieces of gold that we should be searching for, those small things, and how you can be a part of that. And I found those miraculous.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements that come out in what you just shared. Like, I'm hearing that it's the actions of your parents, pretty fundamental to your upbringing and your value systems. Their actions, perhaps not what they said so much, that has left an indelible mark on you. Your mum's, I'd love to know more about what she said about that sort of thing, but it's the way you saw her behave and the way she listened. And I know you're a great listener and your empathy levels are really high, but same with your dad too, is his behaviour and the things you saw that really revealed the type of man and what was important to him. And that's the stuff that sticks with you.
Yeah. But mum never spoke about it.
Yeah.
Mum just did it.
You just got to see her doing it.
Yeah, and she never really, I think she'd almost push attention away from her, what she was trying to do.
Yeah.
She just enjoyed the role that she was playing.
How's that fit with your model? Like, I know lots of what you do is just getting on with doing it, but there's a big promotional element to the things, because you want to draw people's attention to the various not-for-profits and things that you've worked for. How does that fit with you now?
I don't have many skills. Sometimes I'm confused even how I got the roles that I've had. But one thing I know I'm very good at is I'm a very good storyteller. And I can create, when I say storytelling, I can actually create images in people's minds about an issue where I can make them feel motivated and compelled to question wrongs or question the role that they can play in doing things. And I think that's something that has served me well over the years.
Yeah. What's the impact of storytelling? Like, what do you see when you connect with people in that way?
Well, you can all see it. I think we've all been in, events where they're as boring as anything. You've got an MC or a facilitator up or a keynote that's going, and everyone's just being polite and listening. But when that person or anyone gets up and actually starts telling a story, you can actually see the body language. It's a good friend of mine, Aaron Michael, who's the manager of Margot Robbie, and he calls it the lean forward moment, because we were very lucky at Youngcare. I learnt a lot off Aaron. He probably doesn't know this, but we got Margot as our ambassador for Youngcare just through amazing. One of the most powerful women in the world, and she agreed on what we were doing and really supported us to an incredible way. But Aaron, who is also an extraordinary person, has access to the stars around the world, and he would always call it the lean forward moment in any event. And you can see it when someone starts telling a story. You'll see them either their shoulders will drop, they'll start engaging with their eyes, and they'll lean forward. And that's the moment. And I think as a leader, I use that term loosely, but I'm in leadership in my roles in life. I look for creating those lean forward moments, because that's when you are creating that change and that shift that you're hoping you'll provide the audience.
Yeah, totally agree. That's that principle about, you may not remember what people said, but you remember how they made you feel. And stories are about fundamentally who we are as the human condition, aren't they? And how
Absolutely. I've met so many really interesting individuals that most people would walk past. If you start talking about some of the streeties and some of the homeless of our city over the last 20 years, when I first started in that space, most people would walk past and probably even clutch their wallet or their handbags as they were walking past, walk past quicker, these individuals. But I had this wonderful opportunity to get to know most of their stories. A good mate of mine, Pricey, talks about this, and it's not his term, but he taught me, and has taught theology of presence. And that's not necessarily a religious term. What it is it can be whatever you want it to be. But that theology of presence, where you sit down and you engage with someone, body language is you're facing each other, and you get to know these people's stories through presence. You can either reject it or you can embrace it. And they're those moments that I think are important too.
Yeah, they are. I wanted to ask about, like, a pivotal moment in your life was shifting. Like, you went and studied finance at university, and there was a moment when you
Bachelor of
shifted
Arts
to teaching.
Economics.
The arts bit's just as important as the economics part. This explains a lot about your storytelling, I think. And I was going to ask some questions around that, but maybe you're taking us in the direction of your work with the homeless community, and Eddie's vans, to me, is the part that I think about when I think of you and that journey. Can you tell us about where that started when you were teaching?
Yeah. I was year 11 and year 12 economics teacher. Some would argue they knew more about economics than me, but I really enjoyed. I loved teaching at Terrace and teaching economics. And what really started off the Eddie's van happened in a quite an innocent conversation between my students, where we were teaching the price mechanism, profit motive, and I was trying to get them to understand price mechanism in reality. I said, guys, to get to Spring Hill here, most of you catch the train or the bus. Some of you get dropped off, but you would have noticed that there's so much homelessness and street kids around, and men's hostels in this area. You're right smack bang in the middle. Why do you think they exist? And there was a student of mine at the time, he's now a good mate of mine, because I was a young teacher then, Robbie Gunderlach. And Robert put his hand up and he said, because they're lazy, sir. I said, what do you mean, Rob? And he said, if they really wanted to work harder, they could get off the streets. They don't need to be on the streets. And teaching is something that there's a real skill to it to become a good teacher. And those that actually teach from the curriculum and says, this is how you do it, I don't think they're as good as the teacher who allows the student to arrive at the answer themselves. And so that sparked that moment. Well, because when I asked that class, put your hand up if you agree with Robbie, everyone put their hand up. There was not one student that didn't put their hand up. I know that sounds like an exaggerated stereotype. No, everyone in that economics class put their hand up and said, yes, they're lazy. If you're poor, you're lazy. And so I had to challenge that, but I couldn't say they're wrong. I had to allow them to arrive at the answer themselves. Anyway, cut a long story short, 2 or 3 months later, we'd started up our own program, myself and Damien Price, where we'd engage those students into a 24-hour experience of living on the streets. It was very experimental at the time.
Yeah, well,
Headmaster Brennan McManus allowed us to go out for 2 days overnight. We'd sleep at South Brisbane, literally on the floor of a hostel now, St. Vincent de Paul. So we were amongst it, and we lived for, we wanted them to live the life of a homeless person for 24 hours, encounter homeless people, not serving them, but encounter them as humans, sit down with them when they're eating, walk from hostel to hostel, walk from soup van to soup van, and understand their daily rhythm and understand where they slept. We wanted them to have a shithouse sleep. We wanted them to sleep on a hard floor and the next morning wake up at 5 a.m. in the cold and actually have to go find their next meal. Yeah. We wanted them to understand that. And all of a sudden, during that encounter of a physical 24 hours, not only were they confronted by it, but they were talking to these people and they realised they were engaging, that they were intelligent, that the streets weren't drug addicts. They weren't, they had all various stories. And I'm not trying to say they were all saints, but what they did in those encounters changed and challenged their stereotypes. So when I came back and started having that same question back in the classroom about the price mechanism, the shift went from being lazy, etc., to being able to really look at a deeper dive of what were the reasons why those people were on the streets.
Yeah, it's a shift from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions.
Absolutely. What got them there? Yeah. Look at their shoes. What journey did those shoes have to get them to be sleeping in the botanical gardens? Why is Tony, who one of them got to know, why did he die in the botanical gardens by himself? Terribly alone. All of those sort of things. And it challenged them. And all of a sudden, because we did it in an authentic way where we weren't ramming it down the students' throats and allowing them to talk amongst themselves and then engaging the parents as well at that time, it created a complete cultural change at Terrace at that time. Because parents then said, can we start volunteering? Can we go out? And we did. We started bringing the parents in and they started having the experiences. And the most important part of that wasn't the doing, it was the reflecting. So we would then start bringing them back after being out for 24 hours, but then sitting down with them for a couple of hours and going, okay, how are you feeling? What are you learning? And we found the most powerful conversations happen between those that experienced it themselves and they were teaching each other. Yeah. And that's where we saw this physical, intellectual shift in their thinking.
So I know, I'm going to jump now, but I know that strikes me as, I feel like that's a concept you've carried forward into lots of other initiatives. Like Gone Fishing was an initiative you got to take business leadership to third world country, took them to Kenya and Nairobi slums and things like that. And I think I've heard you talk about the reflective process and how important it is there. Is that right?
Absolutely. We did a lot of work in Kibera slum, which is the world's, I'd say, probably the world's largest slum at the moment. No one really knows the population there. Yeah. What the Kenyan government officially say and what the actual numbers are miles apart. In fact, at one stage, Kibera didn't even end up on Google Maps because they refused to have it there or naming it for what it was. And Makuru slum is, I'd argue, probably the toughest, hardest slum, literally on a toxic waste dump where the community lives around. Anyway, we wanted, a little bit like the street retreat program that we ran, we wanted to create an opportunity for what I would say were decision makers who had opportunity to influence others in their daily lives through their work, the opportunity to share together an experience under, we call it gone fishing, under that teach a man or teach a person, I should say, to fish. They'll eat for a lifetime. And it wasn't they were going there to provide solutions to those people in the Kibera and Mikuru slums of how to get better and how to break out of their cycle of poverty. It was there that they were there to literally listen and experience together, and don't come in with a condescending arrogance, but that you've got solutions. You'll probably find that they've got solutions about how you live back here, about really how you should be living. And that juxtaposition, that challenge was amazing. And the best, my most favourite memory of that time, who is now another good friend of mine, John Tyquin, who was one of the owners of Goa. You see the Goa billboards everywhere around Queensland. And anyway, John came on the first Gone Fishing. And another mate of mine from now, Dave Waldy, would say it was the greatest my nickname's Frankie, and he says he was part of Frankie's social experiment. Anyway, John, no matter how much you prepare people as you walk into Kibera, you try and say the smell's going to hit you, the actual physical enormity of the slum, it's going to hit you. On the first day of Gone Fishing, most of the business people that come in, they've flown in either first class or business class into Nairobi, and on purpose we'd say, we'll look after your bags, don't worry, they're going to go to St. Mary's Convent, and that's where you're going to be staying for the next 3 weeks. But we're going straight in, and you're going to go, the Mikuru or the Kibera slum residents are going to take you for a tour of where you're going to be working for the next 3 weeks.
Straight from the airport, straight
pretty
to the
much
slum.
in. So often, honestly, a lot of them have come from first class experience of Emirates or whatever. And so you tell them you've had the meetings with them beforehand. And Johnny Tyquin was really pissing me off, annoying me, because as soon as he landed in Nairobi at the time, he was making jokes and telling jokes. And that was his way of coping. Of course, I knew that, and laughing about the smells and et cetera, and looking at things. And anyway, we've driven towards where the Kibera slum is, and he's still in the back. And I was trying to get them to look and start making comparisons about what it was like where you've just come out of Brisbane, Sydney or Melbourne, and now you're in Nairobi, what are you seeing? But all I could hear him in the back of the bus was talking, telling jokes about rugby or whatever. So come on, John, turn on. Anyway, we parked, and we've met the individuals who are going to be taking us for the first tour, and he's still mucking around. And I thought, oh, this is not going to be great. He's going to be a real challenge on this. And we walk over the hill. He's still telling his jokes, which is everyone's listening into. And we walk over the hill, and it was one of those days that there was a wind blowing through, and your first view of Kibera is the Kibera River, which is literally a river of human excrement, because there's no toilets there, and it's just flowing, and you've got kids playing in it, you've got people living on it, etc. And we walked up over the hill. John's in the middle of his joke, halfway, and the smell has hit him. And he kept telling his joke, but then stopped. And literally, you can almost, sounds like a movie, his words just sort of disappeared. And he started walking down this hill.
See how much you're enjoying the memory of him just going through that transition.
And he started walking down that hill. And my nickname, as I said before, is Frankie. And he turned around to me on that hill with the smell and he'd obviously never seen anything before. And he turned to me and said, "Oh, fuck, Frankie, what have you done to me?" And I suppose that as an educator, they're the moments that you could see that already he was on a journey, and he was about to really throw himself into something that was taking him out of his comfort zone, but more importantly, just jolting him, really jolting him. Later on that night, when we're sitting around the St. Mary's convent, having a chat over a Tusker beer, the great Nairobi beer, he started off in the reflection with another joke. But then all of a sudden, he just broke down. And his words were something along the lines of, I'll try to get it as right as possible. I came here not really knowing what I was experiencing. When Frankie started talking to me about going fishing, I thought we were going fishing. And he said, I'm here. He said, I don't know what's happening to me right now, but I'm in for this journey. And that was the first night. And his vulnerability created this catalyst for everybody else to actually go, yeah, I'm in as well. And it became this, once again, they came back as the foot soldiers to other corporate leaders to say, you have a crack. If you have a crack at this, we can't tell you what's going to happen to you, but you're going to come back thinking a lot more about what your role in the world is. Yeah. And that was the beauty of it. That was the beauty of being able to provide people the opportunity to challenge their thinking as a person, as a business person, as a dad, as a mum, as a partner, all of those things in it, and it just certainly served that purpose.
Yeah, I started that question with reflection, and I heard questioning whether that sounded like a theme you pulled from the Eddie's van and the initial experience with the Terrace Boys, and that's a tool you're using over and over again. And hearing Johnny, that like what I heard was that he had a thick armor up, that he carried through life, and that experience and
well, I think through like many of us, he lived a great life, a privileged life, and we used to say, don't feel guilty about that. There's nothing. This isn't about you going, okay, I've got to come back and give away all my possessions. That's absolutely rubbish. The whole idea of us was, we want you to come back and think how you can actually be a catalyst. If you've got a platform, use the platform. If you've got an ability to change people's thinking, use that skill in you to do that. You're a leader, you've succeeded, but how do you actually utilize that time and that moment to create change?
Yeah, that's powerful, Anthony. Has there been a time when your values have been deeply tested? Like, speaking of change and reflection, was there a moment where you felt like something didn't sit well with you, or you were really tested on where you were going?
Oh, I got tested the whole time. I think it was Mother Teresa that once said, and this stay with me, that the worst form of poverty in the world is loneliness. Here she was working in some of the world's most challenging slums in India, and she felt so. I would often reflect: are we making a difference? Are we doing? And then if you look at that in context, you're not. Like the work that I was doing on, in my life with either Edmund Rice Foundation or Eddie's van or Youngcare, working with young people with high care disability, getting them out of aged care and nursing homes, etc. And we'd build apartments and housing, and so they could live with independence and choice and dignity and all those sort of things. You go, but God, look at the immense issue. You're not really changing it whatsoever. But I don't think that's what is the ultimate game. The ultimate game is you having a crack. Yeah. When at Youngcare, one of the things was, why I was drawn to lead Youngcare for, I think it was 5 years, was that those moments when you'd had a young person through no fault of their own was living in an aged care home or a nursing home where they actually would do anything that they could to leave, even attempt suicide and take their own life because they couldn't imagine living in a nursing home or aged care for the rest of their lives. Those moments when you provide them that opportunity to live with independence and choice and dignity, you've given them that moment where you see them going through the door for the first time into a home, not a house, but their home. They were just some incredible moments of joy, and I think joy captures it. Just seeing those people transformed, and often I think we sit back and go, success has to be this big, grandiose thing that we've all been taught by the media. That's what we should be striving for. But the moment where I'd see a mum whose son or daughter is going into a Youngcare home for the first time, and they're sitting back watching that for the first time as they go through in their wheelchair, and they're sitting back watching it, and then silently crying because they can see that their son or daughter is out of the horror of living in a nursing home and now living in the suburbs, and the beauty and power of that moment. That's what we should all be striving for.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, what I think I'm hearing is that some of the moments you've been most deeply testing is wondering whether you're making a difference, whether your work and where you're driving your energy is actually having the impact that you think it needs to. And the antidote to that, as it should be, is that personal connection. When you make a difference to one person's life and you can see that,
Yeah.
and you do that over and over.
And I've been able to do that now with BETA, so Brisbane Economic Development Agency, leading that. One of the great things that we get involved in is the bringing the magic round. So ourselves and TEQ, Tourism Events Queensland,
so for anyone listening that doesn't know what that is outside of Queensland or Australia, that's it's an intensive round of rugby league matches in our national competition.
Every club in a competition going to the city for the one time over 3 days. Anyway,
Brisbane hosts it. Yeah, it's fabulous.
But even that is a great moment. So I was in the stadium just last week, I think it was, and you see the kids coming in, and they have no idea that who sits behind why that's arrived in the city. This wonderful opportunity, and the mums and dads fist pumping their kids or hugging, and that's their big event for the year. And being able to provide them that opportunity and that wonderful experience is extraordinary. And I love the fact that no one knows that how something like that incredible mega event comes to our city.
Yeah. You're saying that you have the same sort of feeling through the same, the similar sorts of things you've been doing through work with Eddie's Van or Youngcare and things like that. You can feel that energy in the different things like Magic Round Mate too. And,
absolutely. Oh yeah.
Yeah, isn't that unreal?
Yeah.
So you're a father to 2 sons and a former teacher, and you've seen, as a result, you've seen the journey that young men make from boys to men. And, it's a topic I find very interesting, is that in our modern life, how we make that transition. What do you think young men are searching for today? And, what do you see as the bigger challenges for them? What's getting in their way?
I think if I look back when I was a teacher and what the students were looking for in those days and what they were, the complexity of their lives in those days and the complexity of the lives of the young people today, often the complexity is, they've got different things. Like this era of young men that my sons are going through, they've got the complexity of social media, mobile phones, how they navigate through all of that, where they say they're having a conversation with someone and I see they're texting. And I said, you're not having a conversation. Yes, we are. We're texting. Or we're on Snapchat. We're talking. And I find that intriguing. And then, 20 years ago when I was teaching, it was, there was that version of mobile phones in those days. And I was just thinking that the common factor is they're all searching for identity and purpose. Yeah. That's the underlying thing, that when you and I were at school, we were looking for that as well. And we had whatever was the complexity of our lives in those days. Ultimately, it's all about finding your place, finding your way, finding your purpose.
Belonging and purpose, isn't it?
Yeah. And, my boys did that in varying ways, 2 different personalities, and then struggling with mates, struggling with friendship groups, peer groups, etc. And there were dark moments in that journey, as well as incredible moments of light and rainbow and fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fascinating inflection point at the moment with the amount of the volume of things going at our young people, and I couldn't agree more about, for all humans, about identity is about belonging and purpose, and social media in particular has a different message, that value comes from a lot of material things and aren't necessarily about that sort of connection. So it's a really interesting time.
And but I think we as adults have an opportunity there. So one of my greatest moments as a dad, as an example, was, I've been a long time out of the slums of Africa. In grade 11, halfway through his grade 11 on his holidays, I said, Finn, I'm taking you to Africa. And seeing him go through, I just talked about Johnny Tyquin's journey into Kibera slum. I took Finn over that hill and watched his eyes and shoulders tighten, and his own very physical reaction to what he was seeing in front of him. And and I think that's an incredible responsibility of myself as a father, and we'll never stop providing those moments where you move away from your phone or move away from your device. This is something that is going to enrich you, nourish you, etc. But then allowing them to have their own journey through that is important, and how they put that in the place of, they'll arrive at their own answer, but you've got to give them, I think the most important part of that parenting or role modeling for young people is helping be the architect behind that, giving them the option. Don't tell them how they have to react or how you want them to react, but providing them the experience.
Anthony, I want to listen to your stories all day, and I've got 100 other questions. But that story about Finn, I think, neatly wraps a bunch of the things you've shared today. When I think about your experience and the values that stand out, when I listen to your stories and things like that, a bunch of things hit me really strongly. Integrity is a big one. I don't think it's pretty hard to show up and do the things that you've done over your career without thinking that you've got something that you're aspiring to and trying to be the best version of yourself every day. The high levels of empathy that you were showing a model of that from your mum and your dad through that story too. A stoic guy of his generation, still showing that how much he cares, and that comes through really strongly. But the really practical bit I like, which comes through Eddie's van and Youngcare and Gone Fishing, and I know your work now and your work as a teacher is allowing people to arrive at a place and giving them the opportunity, and whether you're the architect of that or allowing them to get there. I think that's a really powerful thing. It speaks a lot of your humility, I think, is another big value that sticks out to me really strongly. And that combined with giving people the opportunity to reflect and feel, whether that's through your storytelling and reflection and taking people on that journey is an amazing thing. And I know you've been recognised for the fact that Brisbane's lucky to have you, and I know we are. So I really appreciate you sharing those stories and the Manifestly Good audience.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony's leadership style is a masterclass in empathy, humility, and integrity. What really struck me about this conversation is the way Anthony guides and allows people to reach their own insights and conclusions through reflection, not direction, and by guiding, not instruction. Whether working with young people, business leaders, or entire communities, Anthony remains grounded in service and values, and his impact speaks for itself. He's a brilliant example of what life looks like when it's centered on the well-being, growth, and future of others. Thank you for watching and being a part of this conversation. If you found it valuable, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, every small action matters when it comes to creating change. I'll see you in the next one.